There's something in your life you've convinced yourself you already dealt with. Maybe it's a hidden sin you buried so deep you stopped thinking about it. A secret you've been carrying so long it started to feel like just part of who you are. But somewhere very quietly, you know the weight is still there. You've been showing up, praying, reading, doing everything a person of faith is supposed to do, and yet there's this wall. Your prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. The word reads like someone else's story. You serve, you give, you push through, and still something doesn't connect the way it should. And the most frustrating part, you can't fully explain why. But here's what I know, the most damaging kind of secret sin is never the dramatic one. It's the quiet one, the one you've learned to dress around, to build your entire spiritual life beside without ever going through it. Here's what almost no one will say, hidden sin doesn't just affect your relationship with God, it attacks your ability to stand in your own identity as His child. That's the damage most people never trace back to the source. In the next few minutes, I want to show you something that has the power to change the entire texture of your faith, not through condemnation, through truth. Because what I've come to understand is that the distance you feel from God isn't because you're too broken for His presence. It's because there is something specific, something unconfessed, that has been quietly doing damage you haven't been willing to name. And when you finally name it, everything shifts. King David once wrote something remarkable for a man of his position. He described a season when his body felt like it was wasting away, his strength draining like water in a summer drought. He wasn't sick. He wasn't under attack. He was just carrying something in secret, something he hadn't brought into the light, and the weight of it was consuming him from the inside. 3,000 years ago. But if you're honest right now, some version of that feels familiar. Here's what I need you to understand about hidden sin that almost no one talks about. We discuss it as a moral failure, a rule broken, a violation. And all of that is real. But the deeper damage is what secret sin does to your identity. Think about someone who grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where acceptance had to be earned, where the moment you failed, the warmth withdrew, where you learned very young that the safest thing to do with your real self was to hide it. For people who grew up with that wound, secret sin doesn't just feel like a spiritual problem. It feels like confirmation. Confirmation of the deepest fear, that if God actually saw everything, He would do what everyone else did. He would pull away. And so the hiding continues, not because you don't love God, but because part of you is terrified that your love isn't enough to hold His. This is where unconfessed sin becomes more than a moral failure. It becomes a prison built from the inside. The secret doesn't just exist, it occupies. It takes up space in your mental and spiritual bandwidth every single day. Every time you're in worship and someone speaks about honesty before God, the secret shifts. Every time you feel God drawing close, the secret tightens. Every time you read about His faithfulness, there's a quiet voice in the background saying, but not for someone like you. David described this in Psalm 32. He said his bones were wearing out, his strength evaporating. God's hand felt heavy upon him, not as a metaphor, as a lived, physical experience of carrying unconfessed sin in the soul. And here's what matters most. God wasn't punishing David, He was pressing. A parent doesn't stop loving the child who is hiding something, but there is an ache, a distance that doesn't need to be there, and that distance isn't coming from the parent's side, it's coming from the child's avoidance. The hidden sin isn't building a wall on God's side of the relationship. It's building one on yours. Now I want to shift something fundamental about the way you think about confession. Because I believe most people have been getting this wrong. Confession is not informing God of something He doesn't know. He already knows. He saw it when it happened. He saw the moment before it happened. He saw you in the quiet hours after, when the guilt settled in and you told yourself you'd deal with it later. Confession isn't a report, it's an agreement. When you confess, you are not revealing anything new. You are finally agreeing with what God already sees. You are stepping out of the shadow you've been living in and standing in the same light He has been standing in all along. This is the shift that changes everything. Confession is not the moment you become vulnerable to God's judgment. It is the moment you stop hiding from His love. But here's where it gets harder. Because the biggest obstacle to confession isn't lack of knowledge. Most people know exactly what they need to bring before God right now. The obstacle is the lie. The lie that says, if I'm completely honest, if I fully expose this, God will confirm what I've always feared, that I am too broken to be truly loved. That lie is ancient. It's the same voice that made Adam hide among the trees in the garden, not because God was dangerous, but because shame had made his real self feel like something to conceal. And for those raised in environments where exposure always led to rejection, that lie doesn't sound like a lie. It sounds like wisdom. I want to speak directly to that wound. The part of you that flinches at the thought of being fully known, that's not discernment. That's an old wound reading a new situation through broken lenses. That wound learned its lesson in places where love was given and taken by imperfect people. It has no framework for a father who sees every hidden corner of you and runs toward you anyway. The cost of never bringing the secret sin into the light isn't just spiritual stagnation. It's the slow, quiet erosion of who you actually are. Every season you carry something unconfessed, you become a slightly more defended version of yourself. The walls built to hide the wound gradually become walls that hold everyone out, including God, including the healing He has been reaching toward you with. Unconfessed sin doesn't just block your prayers. It quietly rewrites your identity, moving you from beloved child toward person who must earn their place. And you can attend every service, serve every week, memorize every verse, and still never feel like enough because there's a crack in the foundation that hasn't been addressed. But here is what I need you to hear above everything else. In the story of the prodigal son, there is a detail people pass right over. The father sees his son while he was still a great way off. He wasn't waiting at the door to close it. He was watching the road. He had been watching the road. And the exact moment the son turned toward home, the father ran. He didn't wait for the confession to be perfected. Before the son could finish the speech he had rehearsed, the father already had a robe on his shoulders, a ring on his finger, a celebration in motion. The confession didn't produce the love. The confession produced the reunion. God's love for you has not decreased by a single degree because of what you've been hiding. But the reunion, the full, felt, experienced spiritual restoration, is waiting on the other side of honesty. Confession doesn't activate His punishment. It activates His feet. After genuine confession and repentance, something changes that runs deeper than forgiveness. You get yourself back. The part of you that had to be managed, hidden, and dressed around, it no longer needs its armor. And when that armor comes down, you discover that what was underneath was never as monstrous as the enemy convinced you it was. It was a wound. It was a fear. It was a choice that needed grace, and grace is exactly what it receives. Spiritual healing after confession isn't just a clean slate. It's something better. It's a testimony. A story that doesn't begin with perfection but ends with transformation. Healed wounds leave a mark, yes, but scar tissue is actually stronger than uninjured skin. You don't come out of genuine repentance as a cleaned-up version of who you were hiding from. You come out as someone who has met God at the most honest place of their life and discovered He was already there. So I want to leave you with one question. Not as an accusation, as an invitation. Is there something you've been dressing around? A secret sin, not necessarily dramatic, but persistent, that you've been managing rather than surrendering. 1 John 1:9 doesn't say you'll need to prove yourself. It says He is faithful and just to forgive and to cleanse from all unrighteousness. All of it. The path back to the life you've been praying for doesn't run around what you've been hiding. It runs directly through it. And on the other side, the Father is already running toward you. Don't let the lie keep you standing still.